I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and today I'm gonna show you how I captured it. And disclaimer, all I've got for you today are photos. I did not get any B-roll, any video. Everything happened really fast, so I prioritized taking photos over getting any B-roll or clips. And I honestly regret that because the place that I was, I don't think it exists anymore. So here's how it happened. I set out to go to Yosemite National Park to meet up with my friends Kyle and Brandon. The plan was to meet those guys there. They're coming from Utah and they were already there. I was coming from the Bay Area. So like my driveway to the valley floor is like 3.5 hours. I had lunch with my family. I got the car packed up and I got on the road. The drive to Yosemite from the Bay is just like straight across the Central Valley, which is like flat farmland, nothing really going on there. But as I started to approach Yosemite Junction, I noticed a wall of smoke. And I knew there was an active fire to the south, like around Kings Canyon. That's the Garnet Fire. And as of making this video, that fire has burned 30,000 acres and is only 12% contained. And so that fire is a really big deal. But being the location of that fire and the proximity of this wall of smoke that I was driving towards, I didn't think it was a Garnet Fire, which means it was a fire that I did not have any awareness of as I'm driving towards Yosemite. You can see in this photo taken on my iPhone as I'm looking at the foothills of the Sierras, I'm heading towards Yosemite Junction. Like you can see the wall of smoke and it looks close. Like I'm already kind of getting a little nervous because once I get to these foothills, I turn to Yosemite Junction, I start heading up into the Sierras, which requires switchbacks and just, navigating through the Sierras to get to Yosemite. And I'm thinking to myself, is this place going to be completely full of smoke? Like what kind of visibility am I going to have? Is this a good idea? Because smoke means fire. Is there a fire going on around here? Like I was already feeling some of the stress as I'm approaching this area. And at this point, and I'm so sorry, Brandon and Kyle, if you are watching, I'm thinking about bailing at this point because I just don't want to drive in a cloud of smoke, no visibility on switchbacks. But I kept pressing on, just seeing when I was going to hit the wall. So I got to Yosemite Junction, I took the right and got on 120 and then started heading towards a town called Chinese Camp. This town is a historic town rooted in California gold rush history. I drive through it every time I go to Yosemite and there's this like service station right off the road. As I'm approaching Chinese Camp, the smoke was getting heavier and thicker, and then I saw the flames on the horizon. Like on the ridge to the south of Chinese Camp, the mountain was on fire. I pulled into the service station because people were kind of pulling over here, and I think a few other people were making some decisions like I was going to have to make. And as someone who's never really been this close to a wildfire before, I grabbed my camera, I got out of the car, and I began to just snap off some photos right around that little service station in Chinese Camp. You can see from this first photo here, the fires on the mountain. It was kind of freaky seeing that, but it did feel far enough away at this point, and I really just wasn't sure like the speed in which this thing was going to be moving. And I'm also looking around for first responders and there weren't really any there at this point. So I was like, okay, I'll grab a few photos here. Now I had never really even noticed this sign before on the many times I've done this drive, but there is a fire truck crossing sign right here by the service station. And I thought that that was just an appropriate thing to get a photo of. And I tried 3 different compositions. This first one here facing the service station, the next one attempting to get the fire in the background. And then I ran across the street and got a wider composition as well. And this entire time I'm shooting with a 50 Summilux and a 28 Summicron. Not that that's really that important. The smoke overhead was getting really thick. It was making the lighting just really crazy. And I just pointed the camera up and took a photo of what was happening above me. You can see the power lines on the bottom of the frame, a little bird in the top left of the frame. But honestly, like this represents my reality. Like the sun was just an orange ball through the smoke. I went back over to the car and there was this little farm there and, just looking directly at it, there was no visibility behind the farm. The smoke wall was just there. And I got this photo and I made it black and white because it felt like a good way to demonstrate that wall of smoke. Like I wanted you to just feel the cloud behind this farm. and then kind of like still just obsessed with the sun and the smoke and how that looked. And I've seen this kind of shot before in Yosemite. Like I've been in Yosemite where there's so much smoke, you're taking photos of like the sun and it's just a color ball in the sky. It's not really illuminating light. But I love the way this shot lined up with the trees and the sun and just this whole farm scene here. Now, at that point, across from the service station, there's like an Elks Lodge or something. And so I just drove across the street and went up a little bit. It was just a little bit of elevations to see if I could get just any grander of a view. Nothing really up there. But at that moment, CAL FIRE, the local sheriff, and police all began to show up. You can see my Subaru parked amongst their vehicles. They pulled in after I was there, and they began to use this spot to kind of like muster and make plans. I ran down there and just grabbed some quick photos of these guys as they were just, figuring out what they were going to do. I love this shot of the man from CAL FIRE. The dude just looks like a boss. Like he looks like the kind of guy that you want stepping out of a CAL FIRE truck. I also spun the lens wide open and grabbed a photo of him as he stepped out of his truck. Now, at this moment in the story, these guys are simply trying to make a decision about closing the road and evacuating people, because neither one of those things had happened yet. And as I was with these guys, they said that just about a mile up the road, the fire was headed towards the road, and within about 5 to 10 minutes, it was going to be at the road. And so they had made the decision to watch that moment and then close the road when it got too close to let anyone like remotely get through it. So I hopped in the car and went a mile up the road, knowing that I've got about 5 minutes to grab whatever photos I can of the scene that is unfolding here in Chinese camp. After I got a mile up the road and right before I hopped out, I just took a moment and took in the orange glow that was happening all around me. It was really crazy lighting between the sun cutting through the smoke and the glow of the fire on the horizon. Using my iPhone, I grabbed a quick shot of how I was driving, which is like my camera bag and then the camera on top of it. But you can just see like the lighting is wild. I pulled off at just a gravel road about a mile up there, and that's when I saw a CAL FIRE plane come out of the cloud because it had just dumped water on the fire, and like it literally just emerged from the cloud. I happened to have the 50 on. I just immediately flipped it to wide open and just composed and grabbed a photo of that plane coming out of the cloud. I then switched to a vertical composition just to see if I could get any of the ground on this 50, and I got this shot. Close by to this scene, there was an old abandoned house, and again, just smoke. Like behind it, it's just smoke. And remember, we are in a 5-minute window here before I'm going to get in the car and get out of here. So the plane, this abandoned house shot are just within like 10, 15 seconds of each other. I looked up again and it was just another really crazy smoke and sky and sun moment. I grabbed this shot and then I was just like running back towards the car because I saw something else taking place. Now I had parked my car right by a gravel road and I was kind of just running up and down, snapping off these shots. And again, guys, this is happening in minutes. I wasn't there for like 20 minutes. This is just within like 3 to 5 minutes, the next scenes unfold. Now, I can only tell because of the signs that are here and posted on this driveway. This is the Agape bee retreat, whatever that is or was. It no longer exists. The fire blew right into this area. And as you can see here, like this was an intense scene. And like at this point, I'm shaking. I'm trying to get photos, but I'm shaking. And at that point, I'm thinking it's probably about time to wrap up. As I was about to head out, I saw a plane flying back into the smoke. And with my 50, I grabbed this shot. And the sun just kept shifting around through the smoke. And so I just kept popping off photos like back to back. You can see the sunlight cutting through the smoke here. This photo is pretty soft because there's some motion blur because there wasn't enough light and I was shooting at aperture priority. But this is also heavily cropped. But guys, like this moment was like crazy intense. Like I could feel the heat from the fire. Smoke is coming in. And again, we are still within that 5-minute window. I got in the car and I began to drive back towards the service station. But looking back out of my window, I saw this scene. And to me, like as horrific as this moment was for the people that live up there, for the first responders, like this is scary stuff. I saw what I thought was a powerful and beautiful scene. And so I simply parked the car, leaned out the window, and I got this shot here. As I drove past the abandoned house that I had taken a photo of earlier when it was just smoke around it, now the fire is approaching it, which you can see in this photo. The fire is literally like only minutes away from consuming this place. As I went around the bend, first responder vehicles were coming down the road, and the last thing I saw as I was exiting Chinese camp was the road being closed and people starting to line up to make that turnaround and get out of there. Within 5 to 10 minutes of exiting this area, I was back under fairly clear skies, and within 20 minutes, I was under blue skies and away from all of this. I texted the guys, I told them what happened, and I sent them this photo from the back of my camera. And it really just brings up the intensity of wildfires. As I drove home, I started thinking about a conversation I recently had with my friend Bill Brown. He brought up this quote by Henri Cartier-Bresson. I mean, you guys know that famous photographer. He's like a legend, big name. But he's also a contemporary of Ansel and Weston, these famous landscape photographers. Bresson is quoted as saying, "The world is going to pieces, and people like Adams and Weston are photographing rocks." As a photographer, I love capturing beauty, which is mostly demonstrated in landscapes and emptiness, because I see beauty in those things. And emptiness can also mean the remains of humanity, but no longer there. I've got a whole project on that, another video, another time. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, attempting in this horrific moment for so many people to capture something beautiful. And I always go back to this quote: 2 things greatly affect the heart, beauty and adversity. And it's being in the wrong place at the wrong time that we might be able to capture both of those in a single shot. So that was my experience. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to see these photos a little deeper, you can check out my website. I've got a link right below to it. And if you are not subscribed, be sure to get subscribed. All the relevant links are below that'll take you to anything and everything. If you are the praying type, be in prayers for those that are continually affected by these fires and wildfires in general. Because I am the praying type, not ashamed of it, and my prayers are with these people. And on that note, I'll see you next time.